Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Laura Bruno, and today I have the great pleasure of introducing you to one of my favorite people, Tania Marie. Tania is an artist, a Reiki Master Teacher, a crystal curator, author of Spiritual Skin, and so many other things. I just thought that it would be wonderful to have her on today. She's the first person who told me about the North Node in astrology, and that's something that I do a lot of with readings and North Node horoscopes. And so I thought it would just be great fun to have Tania on today. We'll start talking about the North Nodes and we'll see where else it leads. So welcome, Tania.
Hi, Laura. It's good to be here. I think, what was the last time we were together? Was 2018?
I think fall equinox 2018. So
okay.
this is
fun. It's like a reunion.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So how did you discover the North Nodes? I know that I, discovered them initially through you and then really did a lot more research, but how did you get into that?
Okay. So I'll just give a brief little background so it makes sense and put it perspective. So I started my personal journey young on a conscious level, like around 14, because my mom introduced my brother and I to some metaphysical books. And then we started, taking off from there. And then my brother really jumped into the whole astrology scene. And he's more the astrologer in the family. I'm just like learning, offshoot little baby from him. But so he went into all that. And around like 2021, of my age is what I'm speaking about, is that time when he started really showing me my chart and taking apart all the pieces and, helping me to understand how that all works. And during that time period, my brother and I are both very introverted people. So our fun thing to do was going to bookstores, the thing that people don't do anymore. But we used to go to all the metaphysical bookstores, Barnes and Noble, all that kind of stuff, and go to the sections where that kind of thing could be found, spiritual growth, personal growth, astrology books. And it was one of those times that I decided to take my astrological placements that my brother had given me, including my North and South Node, which at the time I didn't really know what it was about, but something just told me that day that that's the thing that I was going to be researching in the bookstore. And I can actually picture myself. I can see myself kind of up against the wall. I used to take a notebook and write down a bunch of information that I would get from the books because it was free. You could just spend hours in the bookstore. And that day, I just, like I said, there's no forethought to it. It was just, let's look up the North and South Node stuff. And I started looking in the books, and that was my whole day at the bookstore was North South Node. And it was like that aha moment. I think if I was a cartoon character, it would have been that big cloud with the bing, with the light bulb that goes off. And just for me personally, it might not be for all astrologers or people, but I just felt like that made sense of everything. It was sort of the template for my life journey, what my path was going to be. And even though all the other stuff made sense that my brother was helping me to understand, that really put it in a nutshell and made sort of a layman's sense to someone who doesn't really get a whole bunch of stuff, how this is working through my life. And I could see all of that. So it was kind of like the golden alchemy moment. Mm-hmm. And so from there, I got into it then, but then I noticed that it was kind of a progression where I would focus on it, then drop off for a few years, and I get back into it. I think the next time was like around 25, 26 when I was living in Sedona and focusing on it again. And I would again bring up the North and South Node stuff. And then I think the next time was like early 30s, and then recently again. And each time it was like a new layer. But I think it's always been working in the background. And it, like I said, I just feel like if somebody didn't know anything, that puts into perspective your life journey and what you've come into this life with and what you're developing as sort of like your soul destiny, I guess, if you want to call it. So that's kind of my journey. Not anything extraordinary, but it's just one of those, things where time and place and moment of readiness all kind of happened. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and for me, the journey was, you told me about it, and then I don't know why I started looking into it, but I started finding with clients that people who were really, really sick or people who were really, really stuck, that if they had all sorts of resistance going, but they just started doing the more of their North Node and less of their South Node, that all of a sudden they would have breakthroughs. The doors would fling open and the healing would start coming. And as you know, Tania and I both have Capricorn North Node, Cancer South Node. So that is kind of a bond, right? Like when you meet somebody that's on that same axis. So whether it's your same North Node or the opposite, I find there really is this kind of bond that happens because you're working with the same archetypes in your life.
Exactly. And I think wasn't it like right before the time we went into the RV that I mentioned it to you, and then we were looking at it together when we met up in the RV.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And we started learning about our husbands, our Daves, Daves. Yeah. So
so Tania's husband is named Dave. My husband's name is David, and so we kind of have this twin thing going on. But so both of our husbands have Cancer North Nodes, and then we both have the Capricorn North Node. And so what have you found as far as that balance goes? Like how has that kind of played out with you guys?
So it's, at first I think if you weren't conscious about the fact that the two of you have that going on, it could make a butting of heads happen, because they're going to bring out the part of you that you're trying, to move out of, or that's now gone into the non-productive stage because it's trying to get your attention, So in order to get past that, you really, I think, need to bring it to the surface, because then you can start to understand your partner and you go, oh, okay, that's why they're like that. I was there, I understand. And then it helps you to help each other, because then you want to nurture that part of that person, because that's their journey, and then they can become aware of how they can help you. And so you have sort of like the dharma for each other, right? Mm-hmm. That you're helping. So you don't have to get triggered by something, or if you do get triggered, you can immediately shift that internally and create the alchemy and go, oh, okay, they're mirroring that. I need to shift that part of me, or I've been overdoing this, so let's move this direction. So I've seen how Dave's strength have really helped, catapult me in that direction, and vice versa. And really, I've seen it pop a lot in him recently too, where he's really embracing the Cancer North Node parts of himself. And interestingly, since we have that mixture of the Cancer, which is sort of the nurturing, home, the familial kind of energy, and then we have the Capricorn, which is, more about your professional life, say, or being goal oriented, or, creating that sort of thing mesh, we together have found a mutual interest, which is getting into real estate, which kind of hits both this thing, mm-hmm. right? Because families have to live in homes, and home is very nurturing, and then you have the business aspect of it. So that's sort of like our side thing that we can bring our gifts together to do, while we then have our individual things. And he's gotten more like on his spiritual path, and I'm shifting into bringing other things or aspects of myself down to earth and creating something more with that. Mm-hmm. But I think it can be super helpful, even more so, to have somebody at the opposite end than somebody who's exactly like you, right?
Well, yeah.
So some people I know, and me included, I know in my past, I was always looking for somebody like me, but those ones become boring or whatever. There's just not that dynamic that creates excitement or whatever. And if you have an opposite, there's much more of that, or there's much more potential if you're willing to be conscious about it to actually grow.
Yeah, I think the conscious part is the key, because that South Node energy can be really sticky, right? And it can play out different ways, because if generally the South Node is kind of like the negative aspect of any of that. So for Cancer, as an example, codependency, too much shyness, got to be in that Cancer crab shell, just like not wanting to step into any kind of leadership role. But if you have a Cancer North Node, it's more about the need to become more nurturing, to become softer, kind of moving more into family as opposed to like away from family as the balance. And so I think what you were saying about how if you're conscious that you're not the same, then you can find a new balance where the one person has already kind of mastered the things, because it's their South Node. They've kind of already mastered the things that you need to work on. And so that can be like a really nice symbiosis. But where it falls apart is if you think, this is my path and this is what needs to be done, so therefore everyone around me has to do exactly the same thing or they're off path. And yeah, that's not true.
And I think balance, like what you said, is the key word there, because I don't think it's about an either or, like just becoming Capricorn North Node. It's like, no, you somehow have to merge those good qualities of the Cancer part of you and then create balance within both. And so having that person there is going to help you tweak that all the time, and how to find that soft, that perfect spot, that sweet spot between the two. So.
And I also find, just like with families or friendships, things, people have me do readings about relationships a lot. And a lot of times, if you look at that North Node and you can explain to someone, hey, yeah, this person's life path involves these things. Your life path involves these things. Your job is not to be the same. Your job is to do you, let the other person do themselves, and then come together for the highest expression of those things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
can I use one example that kind of goes along with this?
Yeah.
I just was thinking about it, and you probably remember this because I told you at the time, but Dave actually helped me a lot at that time, that pivotal time when I needed to really embrace more of the Capricorn North Node part, was when shifting from that dependency, because Capricorn, you want to go more into professional life and not be dependent on others emotionally, financially, all that kind of stuff. And I was at the end of my financial cushion at the time, and really, trying to embark on creating my vocation and manifest that. And I remember that, I talked with Dave about that. And this was before, being married, and we kind of took care of our own expenses and stuff like that, even though we were sharing, living together. And, I told him, okay, I'm sort of getting at a point where I'm going to have to struggle here. And so he sort of took that stance, as the Capricorn, would have, and said, okay, well, I'll give you a month. And
I remember that.
If you can't get things going, I'll support and help you during that month. But after that, you're on your own. And because he is that other half, it was almost, again, that alchemy thing that clicked something in me. And I was like, oh, heck no. And it totally put me into Capricorn mode. And I'm like, somebody's not going to take care of me. And I shifted energetically immediately, and I never ended up having to get help from him. And I just started on a flow and got better and better after that. But because he created like a goal-oriented thing, which a Capricorn North Node needs, and putting me more in that role of, I have to provide for myself and all that, and not wanting to be dependent, it pushed me. But that's just who I am too. Like, if you push me up against a wall, I'm going to make things happen. But he helped by having that. So that was a shifter. So.
Oh yeah. Well, and I've known you a long time. And so I've watched the changes over the years. I mean, you used to be so shy. I remember like you didn't even want to say your name in a class. And now you're teaching classes and you're leading retreats and you're
I
out there
think I'm
now.
shy. What would I be considered, an introverted? No, an extroverted introvert? Is that
Yeah.
what? I'm still an introvert.
Me too.
So yeah, but it's and I don't know. I'm sure, it probably plays out differently for everybody based on all your other placements and your family dynamics. But for me also, I noticed the huge part of my shifts had to do with one, changing the paradigm of a traditional woman role into that new woman, and also learning about boundaries. Like those were the huge things that my South node has challenged me with. And so coming from that, because if you're in the South Cancer node, that's really the mothering energy, the maternal energy, and the female. And then moving into the Capricorn North Node, that's the male, so it's the complete opposite. But within my family dynamics, it was about having to shift, not only, not wanting to be the at-home mom with the kids anymore, but then also stepping into the role of provider, having a professional life. So that can really ruffle a lot of feathers. And so that was something, that's part of an expression of how I had to shift stuff in my family. And it can be easier when you're just, going into maybe what's a more accepted vocation. But then on top of it, when you're trying to get into a vocation that's completely non-traditional and shift the mothering and female role, it's even more challenging. So, but that's just to share how, this kind of dynamic works that we have, within our North and South Node. I don't know if that was the same for you so much that you had to shift, but that was me, like really huge. I had that very traditional mother role. So,
Well, and for me, I noticed with the Cancer South Node, it plays out a couple different ways. Like sometimes the person can be more like the eternal child, and like you need to step out and kind of grow up and be the leader. But then other times it's somebody who, like, as a child was the mother of the whole family. And that was more me. Like my family, my mom got very sick when I was in high school, and I kind of had to take over all those roles. And it was just very, very enmeshed. And so for me, it played out a little differently, because when I met my husband, I already had a career and was already doing all of that. But it has been a process for both of us of kind of finding that balance of how do you care for your family because you love them and they need support, but then, where do you draw that line on the support that you provide? And we've been a really good support for each other in being able to bounce things off of one another. But our roles with our families have had to be different because just our life paths are different. But you guys got into real estate. And for David and me, we have separate, like our businesses are very separate. He works he does HVAC repair, so heating and cooling repair. So he's going into everyone's homes, which is Cancer. And he often calls it like the ministry of HVAC, because he'll run into like the little old ladies, the widows, the recent widowers, and kind of provide some counseling as he's working on their furnace or as he's dealing with their air conditioning. So that's a way that played out for him. But when he had his longer career, which he had when I met him, he had been an international flight attendant for American Airlines for like 23 years or something. And, fluent Dutch speaker, German speaker, but the host, right? The consummate host in the sky. And so that was very Cancer North Node also. And for me, before I had my brain injury, I had a sales job. I saw my mom not being like equal partner in the marriage. And so I didn't know it was the Capricorn North Node thing. It just, for me, was kind of like, well, no one is ever going to like be able to control me with money. And so it's like, I have to make my own way. And so in that sort of way, the dysfunction actually forced me onto path. And I do find that happens a lot, actually. And it helps you to kind of feel a little better about the dysfunction if you realize, oh, actually that difficult dynamic was correct for me.
Yeah. Do you find, what are the current challenges that pop up the most that you find with this?
For me, it's still finding that balance with family, just like, triaging, like, oh, what's happening? And just realizing that as much as I care, like other people in my family have to step up, or I have to step back because I can't do my business if I'm totally burned out from doing too much, family support. And so for years, David and I were both supporting his family tremendously. We moved to Goshen, as you know, and we're really helping them. But at some point, I had to really pull back from that and just be kind of like the support behind him, but not be the person providing all of that. And just in my own life, I've had to kind of be more like the organizer. So I'm still supporting, especially my mom, but instead of doing it as more like the counselor and, the super good daughter and all of that, I'm having to do more behind the scenes, like almost like management, like, hey, let's have this on hand and let's get this, person who can help. And that, so it's in some ways kind of being more like a CEO or something, but that has provided a good balance and it seems to be working. So, yeah.
Good. Yeah, I would say that's probably my biggest thing, but that also extends into just being a Pisces, but it's the boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
It is what I'm working most with these days in terms of the South Node and North Node, because it's hard when you have a Cancer South Node, as you know, because you're very nurturing and wanting to give, and you're very empathic and compassionate, and that's how you define yourself, is how much you give. And so to shift out of that into a place of you're still going to do that, but you come first, and then the rest happens, is a whole shifting of mindset that takes time, and how to voice that in a compassionate way, because your first instinct usually when you're shifting into North Node is to become rebellious, right? And you can act out and you can get angry and you can spit fire. Well, I can because I have Mars in my first house very easily. So you have to, that's the balancing, temper that. So that's still, my place is the boundary thing, and finding that fine line between saying no and having the right words to still, care and show that kindness, but to understand that I have to be the first, then you have that well to give. So yeah, that's still my focus, and guilt.
Oh yeah. Guilt's a big one.
I had but it's always there. So I always catch it, because I had a very prominent figure in my life early on, like in my 20s, say something outright to my face, which I never forget and always, bring forward whenever I have a guilty kind of feeling. Because they specifically said, well, I know, Tania, that I can use guilt with you, and I'll get you to do things, da 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 da. And I was like, wow. That was, I guess my higher consciousness really called that one up, because people don't admit that. And I was like, boom. And it's an imprint now that whenever that comes up, I'm like, oh, boundary, it's gone. So yeah, but it's good. It's, I don't find the stuff that pops up anymore as a negative. My perspective immediately is to shift into, wow, this is a great reflection. Look what I just called up. I can shift it immediately, so it is about being conscious. So I do think that when somebody becomes conscious of their South and North Node, it's going to help you every day to become aware and present with the things that pop up, rather than, just thinking stuff's coming at you from nowhere. And then you can work that alchemy in every moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there is that kind of destiny component, which when you lean into it, when you finally accept, okay, these are the things that I'm learning this lifetime. Like, this is what my soul says is on the itinerary, and I'm not going to get out of it. When you kind of recognize that, then you can look for the blessings in it, and you'll find them. But the resistance I find, especially with the North-South Node axis, once you hit midlife, the resistance, like it's pointless, because life just keeps orchestrating all of the ways to bring up those issues, to make you step up. And the open doors by following the North Node, and the slammed shut closed doors by trying to do it your old way, eventually you start to recognize that even though this feels totally unfamiliar and just like this foreign thing, and it might bring up a lot of guilt depending on what your South Node is, it just, from a practical standpoint, it doesn't pay to do the old behaviors. That you have to really learn how to embrace the uncomfortable. And when you do that, tremendous growth happens.
Yeah.
So what would you say has been kind of like the number one thing that has enabled you to really just live more on your path, whether it's totally North Node stuff or, your whole chart? What has kind of helped you to joyfully do that?
Joyfully do it. Well, you do feel good. I mean, you immediately feel good when you follow this stuff. I mean, there is a feeling that comes along with, as you said, if you don't, you're going to feel a certain way, and your body might even show up a certain way as being depleted or get sick or whatever. And when you follow it, there's just like light comes out of you, and everything just works magically. It's hard to pinpoint a specific. I mean, in general, just with my path, I always thank my brother, because his voice is always there, because he's always just, kept me on path. And so I always see and hear him with this kind of stuff, or the astrology thing, because I remember how many hours he spent going over all of my astrological stuff. And so I recall all of that information. It's really hard, and having Dave, I guess, too, right in front of me, is a huge keep on path moment kind of thing. I don't know if I've answered your question or if I went a completely different direction.
Oh, no. I mean, I think we're in the let's drift around phase of the conversation. So I wasn't. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I wasn't going to mention this in this conversation, but it may be relevant. So Tania and I both turned 50 this year. And so we're both in various stages of our Chiron return, because of the way that Chiron kind of, is a pretty slow moving object in the sky, and with retrogrades and everything, you've actually been probably like a year ahead of me in terms of having your Chiron return. Mine's just went exact on June 12th, was like the first exact hit. And, but you're only 3 months older than me, and you've been in it now for over a year. So are there things that you've noticed that you can pinpoint in terms of like old wounds coming up, that all of a sudden, even though it's like so in your face and intense, that the healing comes? Because I feel like that is a big part of the Chiron return too, is the opportunity to heal.
Yeah. And everyone might not have it this way. I think I've been a little bit fortunate. I don't feel like I've gotten crazy hits. It's more of, because last year, as you know, I was in Oregon and had a lot of death with animals showing up in front of me. And that hit like an inner core with me. And it happened more it happened more on just an inward level where I didn't even have to actually consciously work it out. It was just that the sea lions that I was finding were like representative of me. And so what I was processing in that moment with them felt like all of my stuff in that moment. So it's not that I had to like go backwards and fix all of those things. It's like it all just rushed through. And so it gave me like a couple of days of just feeling a lot of tears and emotions come through. So it was like, and that's just how I work, because if you know my other setups with my 6th house, a lot of my healing, the work I do is through animals. Mm-hmm. And so they can be stand-ins for like my inner child. So it made a lot of sense that it would come that way rather than me having to confront something myself. But I did have a big release through that trip where, because we were riding on bicycles along the beach a lot, I had like a huge roar, like a sea lion roar, I guess, that came out. And I was like, I'm just done. It was like, I said no to everything. And I screamed so much that I like lost my voice that day and I just let it all go. And after that, I just felt so free and like in command again. And so since then, it's not that like little things haven't come up. They're just moving in and out. And then I have these reflection modes where I just go back really quick. Oh, okay. And then I move forward. So it's been more like that. It's kind of just a quick soul reflection. Maybe it's kind of like looking at your Akashic records real quick and flipping through them. Oh, okay. And then, okay, I'm done with that. Let's release that. Okay, boom. So that's kind of been my process with it, but not something major. The bigger things, like I said, are maybe around boundaries. So that's just like an ongoing thing that I think I'm always just going to be working on to fine tune in the way that feels right for me, so that I'm not the angry no person and I'm not the doormat person, to find that balance between it. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was an interesting point about your kind of primal scream or the yes. roar coming through, because remember, this was like early May it was April. It was the last day of April, Beltane Eve. I had that like freak accident in the doorway where the door just like, it was impossible how it happened, but it slammed on my kneecap so hard. And I couldn't stop screaming. Like I screamed for like 20 minutes straight or something. I was surprised that, the neighbors didn't come like banging down the door or something, but I was texting you at the time, like, I think I broke my kneecap. And I hadn't connected that with the Chiron return. But even as I was like uncontrollably screaming at the top of my lungs, like I have never done before, I was aware that like, oh, this is emotional. Like this is something else that's coming out just on the basis of this knee injury. It was like somehow releasing all of that. And I hadn't connected that to the Chiron return, but it does actually make a lot of sense. So
it's almost like you said, primal is a good word, and just like total DNA shift in that moment when we let go. But so that it goes to show you that things don't have to be that hard, right? That was the old way.
Right.
things can happen. And even if you have like an intense moment, it might just be a day, or, it doesn't have to be years like back in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. The transformation can be very intense, but it can also, I find, be very symbolic, right? Like you have all kinds of kind of magical encounters in the woods and just like sort of strange portal type things. And I tend to have these kind of just odd experiences where like you're going about your day, but it's happening in this very dreamlike cadence. And then you find that you've kind of shifted something, but it's almost like you participate in a spontaneous ritual. And that's how you move the energy, instead of needing to like claw your way out from the bottom of the cave, for the next 6 years or something. So I like that kind of symbolic ability, or the body's ability to just have something very intense and then, boop, okay, it's gone.
But I think what you said before is the key, the consciousness around it. As soon as you become conscious, that's like the ticket, As long as it's unconscious, then it's going to, just keep coming at you in different ways. The minute it's conscious, that's, I think, what starts to make it move more fluidly, because you get it, and then you can shift stuff immediately with it. You just have to be willing to be present with it, right? And accept the gift of it, rather than seeing it as a bad thing. If you get sick, immediately people think, oh no, I did something bad. So then you like get on yourself for getting sick because you didn't make the choice you should have. But I see that as a gift. If my body got sick, then okay, thank you, body, for reminding me. It's not bad that I got sick. It's just, helping me to really make that change. And it's not trying to hurt me, my body. It's not trying to be an evil person. It's not trying to get me to get angry. It wants me to love it more, right? That's the whole thing. And as soon as you do that, then that changes. So
yeah, for sure. The love component, I think, is a big one, because so often I hear from people, and there's that expectation of perfection on the spiritual path, that if you're on path, you will never get sick again. You will always have lots of money in your bank account, and, you'll always hit the green lights. And, it's like, oh, my life will just run perfectly. And the question is always like, well, what's wrong with me if it's not? What's wrong with me? And I find that that's not the most helpful question. If you never ask that question, is a useful question, because bringing back some responsibility. But if you get stuck in that kind of victim blaming of yourself, it's hard to get out of it, because part of having a nicer life is embracing that you might deserve a nicer life. And so if you think you're a terrible person because you're not having a nice life, then, it's hard to get to that next level. So I do feel like bringing that love in, and also the curiosity, kind of like, okay, if I flip this around, where's the gift? Like how might this actually be a blessing in disguise? And if you start looking for that blessing in disguise, you remove the disguise, right? Like you start to notice what the actual blessing is.
So, again, it's all about a shift of perspective, because we judge getting sick or not having the money or whatever as bad. Who said it was bad? Right? We're just defining it as that. So it is about perspective, because it can still be a wonderful thing. It's an opportunity, it's a potential. And maybe it's joyful, because maybe, if you don't have the money, maybe your life shifts in a different way, and you really enjoy things or life in a different way because you don't have money. And when you have all the money, you don't slow down and enjoy life a certain way. So maybe those things are actually great things, and we just have defined them that way with our human language. So
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you too. So you are such a creative person, and just like your whole life is a creative act, right? What are your tips for people that would like to be more that way, that would like to live a more magical life, would like to, create more beauty in their lives? Where would you recommend people start for that?
Oh, but it can be simple things. I mean, because an artist is not just someone who draws or makes music or writes or what, as it can be gardening. It could be how you show up every day, your clothing, your hairstyle, your house, anything can be something creative. So I guess find the thing you're passionate about, or the one little aspect of your life that you connect with, and start there and make that something intentionally creative, or create more beauty around it, or, more focus with that. So if it is, say, your clothing, each day thinking about how you're feeling and what you want to embody that day, and pick certain clothes or scarves or jewelry to start. And I think that when you start in one place like that, then the rest starts to, sort of domino effect from there. But it doesn't have to be some extravagant way. And again, it doesn't have to be that It's with art, although I believe that everybody's artistic. And if you did grab a canvas and just played around with it, you'll find that you're creating some amazing kind of art. It doesn't, it doesn't have to go in a museum, and no one's judging it at a university. Just have fun and go at it. That's part of it is we want to invite our inner child more into the dance of whatever it is, and give that part of us permission. Once that part has permission to come out and feels trusted and loved and nurtured, the more it's going to emerge in other aspects and areas of your life. So you need to find that little place, whatever it is, that you can entice it out and play with it a little bit more. And then I think it'll change things in your life and start to, get bigger outside and expand to other things. So.
Yeah. And I would say that you are one of the more playful people that I know. So it might not be coming across totally in the interview, but Tania's a giggle fest. so
yeah, I probably giggle a lot more than I should about things. But that's part of, I have to figure out how that works with the Capricorn North Node, because the part is not going to go away. So.
Yeah. Well, that's maybe a good note to kind of wrap up on. Actually, I wanted to keep this kind of around 45 minutes or so, but I'm sure we'll do this again if you're open to it, because this was a request from some of my blog readers to have you on. And of course, it's always a joy to do that. So thank you so much for joining us today. And
I'm wondering if Astrid is in the room. She's just not showing up, but she is actually in the room with me. So I know that some people wanted to see Astrid, but
oh yeah,
she has a mind of her own, and she will show herself when she wants. But a lot of times she'll be like right in this corner. I think she's actually in her castle, so that's a good place for her right now.
Yes, the queen. The queen is in residence. For those who don't know, Astrid is Tania's rabbit, but she really is a very magical bunny. So how do people find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Just my website, taniamarie.com.
Okay.
My name.
All right. Yep. Well, I'll put links below to Tania's website, and she's very active on Instagram also. And I'll also put a link to the North Node horoscope. Mike will edit that part out.
Or not. That's our inner child.
I'll also put a link below with the North Node horoscopes, which I do quarterly. And we will reconnect some other time. All right. So great having you on here.
Yeah, it was fun. I can't wait. All right.
All right. Lots of love.
Lots of love to everyone.
Bye.
Bye.